Hello everyone. I couldn't really sleep today, so I decided to make this video. I'm sorry if you hear that. My cat is spazzing out. Couldn't really sleep, so what I really wanted to talk about was something a bit personal, but I feel like it might help some people in the long run, maybe, hopefully. If you haven't figured out by the title already, and it started back in, when did I start high school? I think 2006, maybe 2005. I can't remember, it's been a while. But in high school I had some trouble, which is why I'm kind of the way I am today. And not a lot of people know until now. Before now, the only people who knew about this was my sister, or one of my sisters, and my stepmom and my dad. And I only told them later on, like maybe just a few years back from now, just because it's been years now, so I can handle it. But in high school I was bullied a lot, and I don't mean like physically, but it was more like emotionally, mentally kind of thing. And I have to say the worst part of it was the fact that it came from people I trusted the most, who I thought I could trust. And back then, I mean, you're still a kid, like, what are you supposed to do? How do you handle it? Even during that time, those are the things that like ran through my mind. But yeah, it started in my freshman year, and at first I thought I was just kind of, I guess I felt like I was just seeing things, or like maybe worrying a little too much. But slowly, the people I did hang out with in freshman year and this was back when I lived in Avondale, and this high school in Avondale, big campus, and brother just came home, so I'm sorry if you hear him. But yeah, it was a big campus, and I hung out with like a few people. I think it started around like maybe 5 or 6 people. The fact that the only reason I actually was able to hang out with them in the first place was my childhood friend. And like actually during junior year, junior high, we actually found out that we were childhood friends. It's a little weird to explain. That's like a whole nother story in itself. But yeah, in junior high we found out that we were childhood friends. We've known each other since like literally babies, because our dads knew each other way before then. But like I said, whole different story. But anyways, we ended up going to the same high school, at first. And I hung out with people she knew because she was the only person I knew. And at first, like, we always hung out together every day, but then she started hanging out with her closest friends at the time. So most of the time during lunch, like, I didn't see her, or I did, but then she would leave to sit with other people. And then the people I was left with, like, I barely knew, but I felt like I could still hang out with them just because they were nice and they were her friends. So, you know, that little lifeline that was still there. But after a few months, like, they also slowly started to leave that table. Of course, like, they would always have an excuse, like, oh, I'm really busy, I have to go to do a project in the classroom, or I have people that I already promised I'd sit with today, or I'm just too busy, things like that. And of course, me being like the introverted person I am, like, I just accepted it as it was. And I mean, people get busy. It was high school, barely starting out. But then busy became like non-existent. I would see them around between classes, but when it came to lunchtime, they always ended up with other people, or they would get there to the cafeteria area before I did, and they were already sitting with someone else, and that table was like completely filled. Like, and for those who don't live in America that do end up watching this, we do have cafeterias, like big place that everyone eats in at the same time. We don't go home for like a few hours and then come back. That's non-existent here. Or if it does exist, I don't know about it. But anyways, the tables they always ended up at were completely filled. You would even see like students like just standing and hanging out there still, but yeah, like after a while it just ended up being me. And of course I felt like I did feel like an outcast at the, like, even way before then, even way before like they just stopped trying. And I thought maybe it was just me. Maybe like I was just, you know, I was not talkative enough or too friendly enough, you know. Or maybe they just felt too awkward around me, that's why they didn't want to. But then I started realizing like maybe it was something of me that they didn't like, but I just couldn't figure out why. But I don't know. Even to this day, I never got that answer. But anyways, freshman year went out, like, just ended up being that. Even in the classrooms, I wasn't very talkative. I mean, like, I was always the person that sat in the back or sat like next to the wall, because the wall felt like the safest place in there. Not that there was like any reason to feel not safe, but it's just more comforting, I guess. And I was like always next to the wall, right next to the door. So if I felt like I needed to like escape for some reason, like it was right there. But yeah, but after freshman year, I ended up moving with my mom and my stepdad at the time. It was mostly because I had trouble at home to like not that had anything to do with my dad or my stepmom, but of course, I mean, we fought sometimes, but it was mostly because like I didn't know how to deal with all the emotion that that I held inside for the whole year, like, and a part of me didn't want them to know, so it just ended up being like a ball of frustration, basically. So I ended up just moving with my mom, and she lived on the other side of town in Surprise. So when I moved there, I went, when did I move? I can't remember which high school I went to first over there. I think it was, oh yeah, it was actually like I remember it was the last 2 months of freshman year. I didn't even finish freshman year at that school. The last 2 months, I ended up going to my brother's high school, my oldest brother's high school, because he lived with my mom and I lived with my dad. I don't know why. I don't remember why, but I think he just preferred living there. But anyways, I went to my brother's high school. And since I went with my brother, like I went to his bus stop and I ended up like making friends with his like 2 closest friends, which ended up being our neighbors. And to this day, like I see those 2 as like my brothers. Like that's how close we are. I mean, that's how much time we spent together. We literally spent like pretty much each day together. But of course they're 2 years older than me, so of course like they're in a whole different level in high school, so I barely saw them aside from the bus and like going home and being at home, because like they were like so comfortable with us and us with them. We would just go to each other's houses. Like I would, if I come home one day and they're just there, they're like, oh hey. But those 2 were like, during the whole time, like those 2 were the only ones that I knew for a fact were my closest friends. Friends that were not friends, but just, you know, extended family, not related. But the last 2 years of freshman year, I stayed even more quiet, if that was possible. But I did end up getting attention from one person in particular who later on became who I thought, like, or to me, he was like one of my best friends. And like the only reason he came up to me, it was during like the last week of school, I remember. And he started talking to me in the classroom. We were in our, I think it was math class. Yeah. But during that time, like it's the last week, teachers don't want to teach anymore. So we were playing Jeopardy, and like the kids who wanted to play were like towards the front, towards the screen where the game was on. But he came back towards me because of course I was sitting in the back closest to the door. And he asked me, like, just randomly, he's like introducing himself and saying like, I know this is random, but do you want to hang out with me and my friends? Like, my friend was supposed to go with someone, but she can't anymore, so we thought you might want to go instead. And I'm baffled because, like, why are you talking to me? I'm pretty sure you have more friends here than I do. But I said, sure, I guess. And this is when he even introduced me to the friend that he's talking about, or he pointed to him because we were in the same class. And that ended up, he ended up being one of my, like, good friends. And anyways, but his story, but that friend that he introduced me to, like, his story didn't end so well. But that's also for a different time. Anyways, after class, like, it's funny, like, after class he's like, okay, like, call me if you decide to go. But the funny thing is, he never gave me his number, so I ended up not going, just because I'm like, how do I contact this person, like, if they never told me how? But anyways, like, during summer, like, I was just, you know, playing, like, hanging around with my two other friends, like, my brothers and my actual brother. We would always hang out and since it was summer, it was really hot, so we would always do, like, the water balloons, or messing around with the water hose, or going to the grass area known as the green belt. Like, we always hung out there. We even, like, ended up playing, like, football most of the time. Of course, I was just referee. I know nothing about football. And they played rough, because boys. But yeah, during summer, it just, you know, normal summer. And when sophomore year, like the second year of high school, started, we ended up having to go to a different school. And yeah, we had to go to a different school because a new school was built. So they took the sophomore kids from the school that I wasn't going to, and put them there. So we were, like, literally the first generation of that school. And we were able to, like, do the high school colors. We were able to, like, pick the high school colors, pick the, like, the mascot, and pretty much, like, design the whole thing, which that was nice. Like, we got to decorate the school how we wanted, pretty much. And of course, this campus was kind of big too. It was big enough to where the 5 minutes between class was, like, just barely enough to get you there on time to your second class if it ended up being on the other side of campus. But yeah, during that time, I remember the first few days, it was in English class, I think, and I just, of course, picked the spot next to the door, but closest to the wall. Excuse me. But the people around me ended up being, like, the two girls and, excuse me, the two girls that sat next to me, and, like, a few other people that sat next to me. We ended up all starting talking just because the teacher, like, I guess he gave us an assignment to do together, and he pretty much said, like, just do it with the people around you. So we ended up, like, introducing ourselves, and this class was just right before lunchtime, I think. Maybe, I don't remember. But anyways, I had the idea of, hey, since we're already talking and since we don't know anyone else here, why not just go sit together during lunch? That way it's not that awkward. And of course they agreed, and they felt like a little bit better as much as I did, because we had someone to look forward to sit with at lunch now. And over time we became friends, and over time the two girls that were sitting next to me ended up being my best friends, my other best friends, aside from that other person that I randomly met during that other high school. And these girls, like, again, we would hang out together, like after school. We would go places, hang out like at each other's houses. I remember, like, we even went to one of their houses, and we ended up just making a homemade piñata from just pretty much mesh and like a balloon, just because we wanted to. But yeah, we were really close. We pretty much hung out all the time. We would always either go to like hang out at the mall or the movies, or even just the park that was near my house. But then the problem started again. And this time it was with different people. So, oh, sorry if it's been glitching and I haven't noticed. But anyways, it was with different people. So I thought maybe it was me. I thought, like, maybe there's something about me that I don't realize that people don't like, or that's off-putting maybe. Because we started having problems. Like, they would say things, and sometimes I would like not respond, I guess, the way that they wanted me to. Like, I guess I wasn't really fitting in with the idea of like how we should react to certain things, or like pretty much react to the way we feel. And for some reason, I just never really got how that came to be, because my reactions like were pretty much, I thought they were fine. I thought they were like the right thing to do. But I guess it just wasn't good enough for them, just being the right thing to do. I guess they wanted like even more reactions like how they would normally do. So I started blaming myself. I started overthinking things. I started like skipping out on conversations during lunch and just staying quiet. Sometimes I would skip out on lunch altogether. If things got that bad. And they did. Over time, like during that year, like it got so bad that I ended up choosing to move back with my dad. Just to kind of pretty much get away from that. And I ended up going to a different school again. And for that time, it was even more lonely. And of course that didn't last either. After like 2 months, like after like a semester, I think, I ended up moving back with my mom anyways, because I just like for some reason I ended up being like, I don't want to say cursed because, you know, that sounds like way too dramatic for me. It just ended up being like, no matter where I went, somehow I always ended up being like, being the person that ended up being outcasted, or the person that ended up being talked about the most in the wrong way. And I never knew why. but I ended up having to go back to that school, the new one. Oh, actually, I remember. I didn't move with back with my dad. I actually moved with my mom to a different town, because during that time she actually had to live in a smaller town that's like 2 hours away. And in that small town, it's like literally pretty much everyone knew everyone, and everyone grew up with everyone. That's just how small that town was. And in that high school, there was these like group of friends that I ended up like hanging out with during that period. And and during that time, like, they like shunned me like so quickly, and I thought like maybe it's just because I'm too quiet now and I'm not as talkative as they are, and I'm not as like friendly as they are. But like I still tried the best I could, at least. But then one day I was in my computer class, and one of my friends that was in that group, she always sat in front of me, because we sat in like pretty much in alphabetical order. And she ended up being in front of me. And I remember one day she just turned around and she just told me, "I have to tell you something. I can't hide this anymore. It's like, you're too good of a person for me not to say something." And this like it's pretty much threw me off. Like, it's all of a sudden I'm just sitting here trying to like figure out how to like do these ones and zeros, because in computer class, like during that time, we were trying to figure out like I can't remember what it's called. I know I'll figure out later, but pretty much how to like turn words into zeros and ones. That whole 0-1-0 pattern. But she turned around and she started telling me like what her friends have been saying about me when I'm not around. And it ended up being so shocking, because they ended up saying that I was super bossy, I was mean, I was like pretty much really pushy, and they said that it was pretty much like this like terrible person that was just being mean and rude to them. And then but she told me right after that, it's like, but I know none of what they're saying is true, because you're too nice and too quiet for that. And that's the first time anyone ever actually like told me that to my face. Like, whoever pretty much like gave me that tiny reassurance of like, okay, so it's not me. Like, there is something wrong, but it's most likely not me. But of course, it's like just this tiny hope for me at that point. But like the weight of what she said just ended up being too much. And she asked me like during that time, like, well, first she like apologized on their behalf, which like no one has ever done, first of all, and no one ever wanted to do. But then she asked me, like, is there anyone you can, any other friends here you can sit with and hang out with during like lunch? And I told her yes. And at that time I kind of did. Like, she was my classmate. And we were like friendly enough to talk to each other. But anyway, but I told this person, like, I told her yes, just to kind of reassure her so she wouldn't feel bad, because, you know, she's like the nicest person there, and I didn't want to make her feel bad. So I ended up sitting with my other classmate who was nice enough to let me sit with her. But when like the end of like the semester ended, I told my mom I wanted to move back to the old house, pretty much to where my stepdad was and my brother was still at. But my mom couldn't be there because just her job moved her, so she had to be there for a while. But I just told her like I just kind of missed the city, and I just didn't like being in the country, basically. And she like pretty much understood that. Like she understood that like I'm not one for like just small town. But the truth was, I couldn't handle being there anymore because I was pretty much shunned. Like no one wanted me there anymore. So I ended up moving back, and somehow my problems were worse. Were worse off as I left them. Like, no, I left them in a pretty bad shape when I left to get away. But when I came back, it ended up like being so much worse as I was gone. Because one of my classmates who I was a little bit close with, she started telling me like what my best friends were saying. Like they were saying such terrible things. Like they were calling me like so many names and saying like all these things that weren't true, just to make themselves feel better and to make themselves laugh. And as she's telling me like all these things, like she tells me like she overheard this like in the hallway, and when she overheard this, she got angry. She got angry at them, and she walked up to them and she said, "How could you be so terrible and say all these things when she's not even here? Like do you even realize it's because of her that you two are even friends? If it wasn't for her, you guys wouldn't even know each other." And like she stunned them and shocked them to the point where like she made them realize, like, and they actually said like openly to her like, "Oh yeah, that's right." And so by the time I got back, like they tried to like pretty much welcome me back and like say they miss me and like all these things, even though I knew none of that was true. But I never said anything, just because I didn't want to be the one that started trouble, just for, you know, pretty much the sake of it. So I pretended not to know, which was mistake number one. And over time, like, I could tell the only reason they were still trying like to stay near me, or the only reason they were still talking to me barely, was because they felt guilty and they felt pity, which just made me feel even worse, because that made me feel not wanted, but still, you know, but still somehow good enough to stay with, because I made them friends. So, which also made them guilty enough to you know, just stick around, basically. And which made me feel even more alone in such like a group. Like, you can still be in a group of people but still feel totally and completely alone, and I learned that very quickly. So during that time, and this time I ended up staying pretty much until like my junior year of high school, I think. No, I stayed till like pretty much the beginning of like the last year of high school, so senior year, I think. But between that time, like, things got so much worse. Slowly, like, we started to argue more. Slowly they started to shun me more openly. Like, they would literally find things like wrong with whatever I said or with whatever I did and use that to basically like pretty much turn their nose up at me and walk away, saying like make me feel like the bad person. And it even got to the point where one of my friend's sister, like, one morning we were all walking to class, and during this time, like, we weren't talking, like, but we were still walking together. But I felt so awkward there because, you know, I knew they didn't want me there, but I knew they weren't gonna say anything about it because they felt guilty and they wanted to, and they pitied me. But my friend's younger sister, who was only a year younger, she was basically walking behind us, like right behind us, and all of a sudden we hear, it's like, can't you see they don't want to be friends with you anymore? Why can't you just leave us alone? And all three of us, like, we turn around, like, super shocked about what she just said. And I'm shocked because, first of all, like, this is her younger sister who I don't talk to, yet somehow she knows about all these, like, problems that we've been having. So, I mean, like, her sister, who is my friend, she must have said something to her. She must have, like, you know, pretty much admitted she doesn't want to be friends with me, and said, like, pretty much nasty things in order for her younger sisters to say something for her. Like, so I turn around and I pretty much say, like, what are you talking about? And she, like, pretty much says what they were thinking, basically, that I knew about, but they didn't know I knew. Like, she said, like, they didn't want to be friends with me, and, like, they're only being her friends just because they wanted to be nice, basically. And during this time, like, she's pretty much, like, the fact that she, like, unveiled the truth forcefully, the fact that she did that in front of her sister because she knew her sister didn't want that, because she didn't want to, like, be the bad guy. She pretty much made her sister cry, made my friend cry. She was just crying, like, and she had no words to say. And my other friend, she was just quiet. Like, she was shocked by the fact that she said it, but I could tell that was it. Like, she wasn't shocked by, like, because she thought she was, like, wrong or, like, she was making things up. She was just purely shocked because the fact that she, like, said it out in the open. But I was barely glancing at them during that time, but I still saw all these emotions flying, like, through their eyes, and like, I just pretty much got mad and upset, and, like, it's like, I pretty much told her, like, the person who started this, which was her younger sister, I told her, it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But even, like, won't believe a single word you're saying until I hear that from them. And that was pretty much me saying, like hinting to these two people that I considered my friends still, or wanted to consider my friends still. That was also me hinting to them, if you have something to say, you need to say it, not her. But I just said to her, I won't believe anything you say until I hear it from them personally. And then I just walked away to my first period class, or pretty much homeroom, basically. And my friend that was just purely shocked, she followed me because we had the same class. But the other friend who started crying, the one who was like her sister, I never saw her during that day. But my other friend, she but she pretty much like quickly walked up to me and started saying like, we have no idea what she's like, why she said that, or what she's talking about, like I'm so sorry like that happened, and basically trying to cover it all up and just apologizing for this freak thing that happened this morning. But I just brushed it off and was like, it's fine, I don't care. But I did care a lot. But I didn't want her to know that. Because if she knew that, then she would know that. I pretty much felt like she would figure everything else out. Like, she would know how much I knew. But after that, I pretty much stopped trying to be around them. Which pretty much, like, isolated me. And even though I had a few people in my classrooms, like my classmates that I was friendly with, like they weren't really close enough for me to be able to just tell them like about all of this. Like, you know how people are close to you enough to like share jokes and all that, but not close enough to share like personal stuff. And that's just, you know, how they were. So I kept to myself, even though I still had that other person, the guy that I talked about, even though I still considered him my best friend. Like, that during this time I also had problems with him because of this girl who hated me, like just purely hated me, and she caused trouble between our friendship. But again, that's a different story. That's a whole can of worms, a different can of worms. But yeah, I ended up, like I said, like the beginning of my senior year, I ended up moving one last time, and I ended up moving back with my dad this time instead of my mom. And the high school that ended up graduating from was that high school that I moved to. And this school is like super small. It's still super small to this day, because my dad works there, and my youngest sister goes there. But this school is so small, like the hallway is literally one like circle, and that's it. That's the entire class, the entire school. Just like all the classrooms, just surrounding this one big hallway, one big circle basically. But yeah, during that time I didn't talk to nobody, even though my one of my other brothers was there, went to that school. Like, I didn't even really talk to him just because he had his own thing going, and I don't want to, you know, mess with that. So I just kept to myself. Of course, I had like maybe like 1 or 2 classmates that I ended up being friendly with, especially like in art class. I had one friend named Leon. I remember me and him, like, we were like pretty much ended up being good friends, but we became really competitive when it came to like our art projects. So much so that like anytime we finished an art project, we would see like who finished early, or we would see who came out the best. We would even ask the art teachers like whose picture do you like more. Like, we were that competitive. But yeah, like, he was like the only person that I actually felt a little bit close to, but of course not close enough to tell him like my background or like why I came to that school. But yeah, I pretty much kept my head down the entire time that I finished my high school. But unfortunately, because of all the stuff that happened, I ended up having to repeat senior year because I didn't have enough credits to graduate yet. And that kind of pretty much, I took a blow from that too. Just because all the people I knew before, all the people I called friends before, they were already graduating, no problem. And to me, that felt like they were moving on, no problem. Like, nothing ever happened. Like, they never did anything. Like, they never said anything. like they didn't even care. Which pretty much at that point, I don't think they did. Because I wasn't around them anymore. And I wasn't there anymore to make them feel guilty. But yeah, after high school, like, all of that just messed me up so much that I became so introverted that I didn't want to leave my house. I did want to like meet new people. Sometimes I didn't even want to hang out with my family or like go visit family. I just wanted to be left alone. And for a few years, that's all I did. Just stayed in my room. I didn't leave the house for nothing. The only reason I left was to go buy groceries or go take someone to work. But now, after, it's been 8 years, almost 9 years now, because New Year's is like almost right around the corner. But it's been 8 years now since I've graduated high school, so I can talk about this now without feeling too much. Now, of course, now like it still like stings a little, I guess, but it's not too bad to where it gives me problems like it used to. But that just goes to show, if you have a tough time in high school or going through anything similar, just, it's okay to like speak up. It's okay to tell those people that you consider friends, like, hey, like, tell them like how you feel, like tell them it's like, I don't feel like you want me here anymore. So pretty much like just stand up to them and ask them straight to their face, basically. And if they don't, then it's okay. Like, you'll find better people. You'll find people who really appreciate you. It might not be during high school, like me. It never was. But now I'm slowly finding people who like me just for me. Like, I have a friend now who I love dearly, and she's the best person ever to be around. And but yeah, but this is just my story. I hope it helps any of you who's going through this, or who knows someone who's going through this. And if you know someone who's going through this, then be that friend that's there for them. And you know, just help them. And if they don't feel like they want help, just be there for them. That's the best you can do. But yeah, but anyone who is still struggling, my advice is be the person that, if you're struggling, be the person that you need, that you wish you had. Be the friend that you wish you had. Because if you end up being that person that you needed back when your troubles started, then you'll end up being the person someone else needs. And that's when you realize, like, you can help someone who's also gone through that or going through that. And you'll know right away what it's like for them, to be able to help them. But yeah, this is where I'll end it. I'm sorry for it being so long, but if there's any of the other stories or any of the other people you want to know about, like that other friend that I had who was my best friend, and he ended up being I don't know, he ended up having more troubles because of me, or mostly because of that girl who hated me. But that's a whole different story too. But I'm willing to tell it if you want. But thank you so much for watching. Comment and like and subscribe if you want. And share. It'll really help me out or help someone else out. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Good night.